Nutcracker actually started in 1979. The Pittsburgh Ballet Theater had come to town, and Miyoko and I went to see it. We were close friends then with Richard Snyder, who was the director, actually the first director of the Iowa State Center. And at the cast party afterwards, I was talking to Richard. Miyoko and I had been involved in a number of Nutcrackers, and I said to him that we could do a Nutcracker locally. It's not a hard ballet to do locally because it only requires two lead dancers. The rest of them can be done with local community dancers. But we would need time to, to develop the dancers to do the Nutcracker because they weren't ready for it at that time. He took me seriously. We were in the party and we were kind of goofing around a little bit, and there was some beer involved. But Wednesday, after the party was on the weekend, he sent me a formal letter and a proposal and asked to get together and discuss it further. Well, we did, and the upshot of it is Richard found an artistic designer to design the sets, a set designer. He found a costumer. He found a place where he could buy costumes because he wanted to create a unified look, something that would last and be something that we could do in perpetually for years to come. And he was very insightful. I didn't, realize at the time how much of an event this would become, but I was very happy to work with him on it. And of course, Miyoko and I were very excited about it. The problem is nobody knew what the Nutcracker was at the time. We had to train all the dancers to dance in that form. And at the first, when we first auditioned, there was nobody interested or available that could do point work at that point in time. So everything had to be built from the ground up. So having realized that we needed everything from the ground up, we actually started a summer course where we started rehearsing the dancers because we were going to cast all the dancers from the community. We didn't have a budget enough to hire people, and there wasn't that much available at the time to hire people to come in and dance. This was in 1979. So we had Doug Moss and Monica Zaffarano and Debbie Hyatt and Janice Baker and David Simpson and Carl Vacchietti. None of these names anybody knows now, but back then they were big deal dancers at the time. Dana Schumacher, Cindy Snyder. There was a number of children, young adults that were sort of quasi-dancers Dana actually worked for the university in the dance department. Valerie Williams, we kind of pulled everybody together and started teaching them variations, and we started working with the young dancers on how to perform in a corps de ballet, point shoes, the whole ball of wax. And we worked all summer. And we worked all through the next year, and we worked all the following summer, and then we had an open audition. We always have the audition on this first Sunday after Labor Day, but we'd worked on it for 18 months by now with the lead dancers. And we had an open call and casted. We didn't get very many people. We got a lot of children because this is a great community for children, and they wanted their children involved in something, and it was a holiday event. They thought this would be fun. But it was real, fly by the seat of your pants, choreograph it, pull it together, choreograph it, pull it together. Nobody really knew what the end product was going to be. Even the designer had only seen one, the set designer, Rod Steiger. Richard knew what it was. He'd actually done his own Nutcracker years before with an orchestra. But it was truly, we were starting from ground up. But the set design turned out very, very well. Richard had a concept of creating a design that would be unified, it would be simple, it would have a nice homey look. It would have a tree that was designed after the one at New York City Ballet that grew up out of the floor, so it was a spectacular event. And when the tree grew up out of the floor, you felt as an audience member that you were sinking and becoming smaller along with Clara. I was really particular about doing that. I'd seen that in the New York City Ballet version, a set designed by Ruben Tarantini, one of the great set designers of all time, create this illusion where as you see the tree become larger and larger, it grows up out of the ground, you as an audience member become smaller and smaller. So with that in mind, a beautiful set. With the budget we had, he'd purchased a collection of costumes from a California company that was no longer doing the Nutcracker. They're kind of going out of business. The nice thing about the Nutcracker is there's a lot of them done all over the place, and there's always a lot of sets and costumes available. It's just getting it all together and creating a unified look. But we created it. Richard pulled together a unified look. We had a costume designer that did the mice and the soldiers, but a lot of the costumes were purchased and rented from this California company, and then rented from a local costumer here that did ball gowns and so forth. But we created a unified look in the costuming and in the set. So it was up to Miyoko and I to create the same unified look in the dancers. So after a year and a half, we had a fairly decent idea of what we wanted, and there was about 16 strong dancers, and they looked good. They looked well together. They were coming together. They were starting to work well together as a team. So that's what we took to the audition. And then we selected children. We didn't pick very many of them at the time. There was only going to be 2 performances, and we did 1 cast. So I think we did, the first cast was 75 people or less, including the mice and the soldiers and the children. It was a rather small cast for Nutcracker. Today it's over 300. But there was only 2 performances, as I say. And then we worked every Saturday and Sunday. I created the first act on Sunday, the first act on Sunday, and Miyoko created the second act on Saturday afternoon. And over the course of the next 10 weeks, we put the whole thing together. We got a stage appearance. We were allowed to rehearse on stage the week before Thanksgiving. We got in there and spent some time there, and then we got into the theater production week right before the second weekend in December when they do it. They always try to do it before Dead Week so the students can come. And then they kept the prices small enough so that a family could go all together, and they'd still be able to, have dinner later. So the prices of the tickets wanted to be kept low. Those were the golds, and then everybody in it was a non-professional. And it came out very, very well. The first one was televised by Iowa Public Broadcasting. There were no Nutcracker. There was only 1 Nutcracker being performed in Iowa at the time. That was by the Dance World of the Two Hemispheres down in the Cedar Rapids area, in a very tiny but very beautiful theater. And Miyoko and I had seen it. It was really a beautiful theater. But nowhere else in Iowa was anything being performed at that time. It had been done previously, but the Ballet Des Moines, or Des Moines Ballet at the time, was doing the Christmas Carol, so nobody was really familiar with the Nutcracker. None of our students were at all. But it was a huge success. We sold out both shows. It was televised. We were interviewed. There was a lot of talk about it. People decided, well, maybe we should do it 1 more year. And so that was the beginning. And they said, well, what are you going to do? When they came to me, other people, not Richard Snyder, he had a longer vision, but other people said, well, what are you going to do next? We said, well, we're going to do the Nutcracker again. We're going to keep doing the Nutcracker because this will become a Christmas tradition, and you will learn to appreciate it for what it is, and we'll embellish it and make the roles different, make the roles change, let the roles grow as the dancers grow. As we have access to more talent, we'll do more things with the dancers and with the pieces. We started off with a very small cast, 1 Clara, very few people on stage. But as it became more popular, more people started to come to the audition, more people started to take ballet. We had access to more point dancers because other dance studios started to work more in the ballet tradition, the ballet venue, and then their dancers were trained to be able to do ballet roles. So gradually we accumulated more and more interest in the ballet. The dancers, after the second year, began to realize that some parts are better than other parts, and how do they get to the parts they really want to do, and that it requires taking, dance class somewhere, not necessarily at our studio, but somewhere, so that you're able to perform on stage. When you're asked to do a double pirouette, you can actually do one. When you're asked to bourrée around on point and look light and airy, you can actually do that. So that was a trending and growing process. But gradually people began to show up at the audition that were really pretty good. And the dance teachers in the community and surrounding communities really supported it. The nice thing about the Nutcracker is that it's larger, really, or became larger than any one studio can do. So there wasn't so much of a competitive issue between the dance studios because nobody could really do a large-scale Nutcracker by themselves we all had to come together to make it happen. And that was an advantage, actually. So they knew they could contribute, that nobody was going to take it over. We gradually expanded and went into 3 shows and expanded the roles so that we could get the largest number of people participating as possible. We created, years later, different roles in there, the Harlequins and so forth, so that we can use more younger dancers. We created the puppets so we could use more intermediate dancers. So gradually we got to the point where we can use just about anybody between the age of 6 and 65 that walks in the door, even older than that. There is a part in this current Nutcracker that we could cast them in. We've expanded the length from an hour and 30 minutes to now it's about an hour and 55 minutes plus an intermission. Over the years, people have asked me what have been the best and most interesting pieces. It's hard to really say because they've changed. It's like watching your kids grow up and be asked what was your favorite year. The first years, of course, we became closest to those dancers because we worked with them so long. We grew up with them. We spent summers with them. We, took them out to dinner, eat pizza after a late rehearsal. There was so much part of the building process. Christina Due now, and Doug Moss, and Carl Vakiri, and John Wilcox, David Simpson. I mean, these names are like the names of my children. They helped me with the studio, and they helped us build the Nutcracker. In those days, too, from the center, there was Jake Ewald and Steve Harder. These people were foundation people of creating and building the first Nutcracker. Ann Olson, some of the costume people that really built it and went on years and years to help build the fundamentals of what then became Just Repeat That, Just Repeat That. Clara originally was out on stage pretty much by herself in the early days. Now she's surrounded by beautiful friends and beautiful dolls and beautiful ballerinas. There's a lot more activity around her now. There's just a lot more contribution to the role. The early days with Sarah Getchell. Sarah, this 10-year-old kid, had to hold the stage and keep everybody's interest for 10 minutes. I mean, those people were really foundation people, and we were really blessed to have them walk into our studio and be part of our life and have such strong character to be able to hold the stage in those times. So I don't think we would have made it even to the 3rd year, let alone the 35th year. It's a lot more entertaining now, I think, than it was then. However, in those days, there was a real richness to it, a real fundamental artistic quality because of the performers that we still have, but we do have a lot more activity, and it's a lot more palatable, especially for young people now, I think, than it was in those early days. But it was successful. They liked the story. They liked the fight between the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. We had to watch out. We didn't make that too gruesome because little ones would cry when the Mouse King got killed. But other than that, it was a very positive experience for the kids, and gradually they kept coming back, and they kept coming back, and so it went on. It built it and it evolved, and it became truly a Nutcracker for the Ames community, the Ames and surrounding area community, the Iowa community. And then this became an issue throughout the country. People started saying, we like doing Nutcrackers. In magazines, even just this month, it talks about how dance schools should all do Nutcrackers because it's such a versatile ballet. It can be done in so many different ways. There's been Nutcrackers hip-hop Nutcrackers, all sorts of things. So we weren't off track by expanding it and tailoring it to the community. Ultimately, that point of view has come around to us. However, we do keep it traditional. The music is predominantly traditional music. The choreography is predominantly traditional. The sequencing and the storyline is predominantly traditional. We like to keep our foundation based in the history of the ballet. So there is some training there, but we've embellished, and we're obvious and we're open about what has been embellished and layered on and added to create a very personal production of the Nutcracker. And it's our legacy, and we hope that it will continue for another 50 years, long after Miyoko and I are gone. We have it formalized pretty much now, so that it's like You know, the parts are laid out, the choreography is designed, and it can be put together like the choreographers come in and they make their contribution to the ballet like musicians playing a piece of symphony music. Everybody does their part, come in and they come in and they do the Hungarian, the Irish, the Arabian, the Spanish, and so forth. And then we put it all together, and then it all comes together finally in that last week. But until that last week, they all kind of work individually and separately, and then it all mixes together. But we've developed this formula for doing that so that we can get it done with people that have jobs all over the place and that I never see together at one time except during the performance. But the ballet does come together, but it's all codified and written, and then we do add things to it new and different every year. We have cast assessment meetings before and after each show to see which direction we're going to be, which direction we're going to go. We plan the 35th to make it larger than ever because it is 35 years. The new directress of the Iowa State Center, Tammy Kuhlbeck, is very much on board with it. It's very exciting to work with her. She's actually going to participate in Act 1, which I think is just wonderful. So she'll have a close, hands-on view of the Nutcracker, and they'll be running this Iowa State Center for the next 10 years, Venue Works. So this is a good start. Steve, who owns Venue Works, Stephen Peters, was the second director. He was assistant to Richard Snyder. Richard, as I said, was the first director and started the Nutcracker. Steve was in there in the early years and knows the original, was there for the original and early years. So things have kind of come full circle now. It's back, and Tammy's running the center, but Steve is the one that owns Venue Works. So there's a connection there, which is kind of cool. But what I like about working with her, she's really close, hands-on. She likes to be involved. She's interested. She's attentive, and as I say, she's gonna participate in the production this year. And we're already talking about different things we can make it extra special for the 35th.